Now, Ventura County, I want to spend quite a bit of time and really sort of paint a picture for you of the situation. Now, you'll recall from last year, we sort of presented to you with these 3 data points to highlight that the picture here is complex. That California, or Ventura County, was starting from a position of significant economic weakness. We call this peak Ventura County. This is pretty amazing. Ventura County's population peaked in 2016 and is now down about 3%. The labor force, the number of people working here who have a job, living here who have a job, peaked in 2012 and is down almost 4%. We've added jobs every single year. We're adding jobs, but the number of people living here who have a job is declining, which obviously means we're producing jobs that don't allow you to afford to live here. And then GDP is the really arresting one. So we shared this with you a year ago. Real GDP peaked, total economic activity in the county peaked in 2007 and is down 12.5%. That's actually an improvement. It was down 15% at one time. And we actually had 2 years of modest growth before the COVID-19 recession. But this is a demonstration of a period of prolonged economic weakness for the county. And that was sort of the background going into COVID-19. What's interesting is, we highlighted this 2 years ago and again last year, is that this was the county to be in California during the pandemic. There was truly courageous policymaking done here. We vaccinated the entire educational workforce in a period of 1 month. It became the model for the entire state. County officials with each of the cities and the tremendous efforts of the Oxnard Fire Department in particular undertook one of the most ambitious COVID-19 antibody studies in the entire United States. We drew over 15,000 blood draws trying to track the asymptomatic transmission of the disease in the county. And we actually showed it was very, very, very low, which equipped policymakers to aggressively open schools, and we were among the first counties to reopen business. As we've mentioned in previous years, you just had to be on Lakeview Canyon Road in Westlake Village to know this. There were literally 4 months, there were businesses on one side of the street that were closed because Lakeview Canyon is the county line. And on the other side, the Ventura County side, businesses were open. And so this was really, we've really tried to celebrate the incredible policymaking, the efforts that were made. We conducted this incredible census, the decennial census. Ventura County was one of the most at-risk counties in the United States for an undercount of residents, and we actually went from the bottom 5% or so to the top 5% of all. So we just did incredible, courageous things. But a year ago, we were talking about how now we actually see that with the first year of data of the county recovering from the pandemic, we saw that the county was already lagging behind. Our recovery was slower than neighboring counties. And what we posited a year ago was that we believe this represented a return to that underlying weakness that existed prior to the pandemic. I want to point you to this. If you go to your agenda and you visit the CERF launch page, there's a QR code at the bottom. There's some links to our YouTube site. You can actually see, I really encourage you to revisit. We did 4 features 2 years ago on just real success stories and on the courage and innovation that happened here during the pandemic. So I want to take one opportunity to direct you to that if you haven't seen those. Just incredible stories. Kristen Dekas and the Port of Hueneme working with FedEx to route tanker ships around the Port of Los Angeles and Port of Long Beach in order to make a difference in the global supply chain crisis. So just some really unique stuff. And so I encourage you to check that out. So what did all of that look like in terms of the data? That extraordinary year, you see here, we only lost 1% of GDP, whereas all of our neighbors lost at least 50% more. San Diego County was negative 1.5, LA County 5%. So we fared very, very well. We showed you these numbers a year ago. Our recovery, though, is half, so we're lagging well behind. We are less than half the next slowest recovery. And so we saw that as a return to weakness. We have a new data point, and this one is kind of a punch to the gut. This just arrived in December. The Bureau of Economic Analysis released its county data program, and 2022 GDP revealed that Ventura County's economy is contracting again. And I want to remind you that we were actually predicting positive growth last year. And so this is a pretty big forecast miss on our part. Data not only came in under our estimate, it actually came in under zero. And again, this reinforces our assumptions that we're making about that there's this complex picture. There was a period of weakness followed by really extraordinary performance, and now we're returning to that weakness. And this is a data point, the second data point in 2 years that really reinforces that assumption. So there's work to be done. In terms of that weakness, what it looks like, interestingly, the decline in GDP is heavily concentrated. $16 billion decline in non-durable manufacturing and professional services. That is biotechnology. This is also one of the areas of growth in recent years. And so we definitely hope to see a reversal of fortune in this particular sector of the local economy. But that's been a big driver of economic weakness. There's been weakness in jobs. Really interestingly here, we break out different types of jobs. So first of all, you see here the purple lines are all jobs, all industries. And you see, except for the COVID-19 recession, they've been positive every single year, except for the financial crisis and, of course, for COVID-19. But what's interesting is if we look at enterprise management, information technology, financial industries, these are the three highest paying sectors. Average salary over $161,000. What you actually see here is that we've had a prolonged period of job losses in the highest paying sectors. So we're adding jobs every single year, but they're very overwhelmingly in low paying sectors. So for example, education and health services has added a huge number of jobs. In fact, if it weren't for education and healthcare, the entire economy would have lost jobs from 2007 to 2022, from the financial crisis to now. Okay, so we've added huge numbers here. Average salary of $54,000. Non-durables, professional services, average salary of $161,000, right? So again, we're adding jobs, but we're generally adding them in areas where we can't house that workforce. The civilian labor force is declining. We talked about that, the number of people working here. Even though we're adding jobs, there are fewer people living here who have a job. That means one more commuter on the freeway every single day crossing the county line to work in a job in Ventura County, living somewhere else. And of course, we're also seeing an acceleration of net migration of people from Ventura County to somewhere else in the United States. So we've really tried to think about who are these people. The data is that thousands of people every year, more people are leaving Ventura County for somewhere else than coming, right? This is them voting with their feet on the relative level of economic opportunity here versus somewhere else. What do these people look like? Who are they? Well, interestingly, they are younger than the general population. So here, actually, interestingly, one of the things we struggle with is there's demographic changes happening. The aging of baby boomers, the retirement of baby boomers. How do you decompose the effect of demographic changes from what's happening here in the county? And so what we did is we took the difference between Ventura County's demographic changes and the US demographic changes. And what you see here is that our population is losing most among younger age category. The US is actually, here, Ventura County is actually gaining people 60 and up relative to the United States, right? 60 and up. These are people who have wealth and high incomes, maybe are retiring and are coming to Ventura County to live and retire, right? We're losing the younger population, under 39. And in fact, we're losing under 39s at a faster rate than the United States is, right? They're also middle income. We are losing middle income individuals relative to the US. So you see here, the categories where the decline is sharpest is between $50,000 and $150,000. Middle class, younger middle class. These are in many cases individuals who are moving to other states to form households, to start families, to build careers. And that means that they are people moving to other places to be drivers of economic growth, drivers of greater prosperity in other regions. We also try to look at where they're moving. Texas and Arizona are the two most popular. And so that's the data. And the net migration story is I wouldn't say it's so much a driver as it's a symptom of some other dynamics that are happening in the county. But we want to go beyond the data, and we sort of want to give you a snapshot of who these people are. So I want to introduce you to Travis Kanabe, a native of Simi Valley. He doesn't need much introduction. I'll let him do the talking.
Born and raised in Simi Valley. My parents moved there a few years before I was born. I have 4 brothers and sisters. There's 5 of us total. And I grew up in the all-American household. Mom was able to stay home with all of us kids, drive us to all of our sports. My dad was a fireman, and that's all I knew, and I thought that's what life was. I went into the Marine Corps in 2006. I graduated in 2006 from Simi High, went straight into the Marine Corps. I did a ride-along with my brother when I got home, and seeing him do the job really sparked interest for me in the fire service again, and that's kind of how I went down that route. I served my country, and then I wanted to serve my community. I got married, and when we thought about having kids, it was easy. Here's the plan. I'm going to become a fireman. We're going to have kids. You're going to raise the kids, and I wanted to mirror my parents' life. You know, we'd always talked about possibly moving out of state for multiple reasons. Everything fit what we were looking for with Texas, but we'd never been to Texas. We flew out on a Friday. Our plane back was on a Sunday, and we signed paperwork for this home on that Sunday within 2 days. We fell in love with it. It has everything we're looking for not just us, but for our kids' future. The opportunity out here is endless for young people. They're gonna have opportunities out here that they would never have in California. To grow up, born and raised somewhere, and have so much family in one town, and you've grown up and you've all had kids, right? There's nieces, nephews, cousins. To leave that is a big deal, a very big deal, and it's very hard. But we wanted so badly for our kids to have a future that we left all that behind. So my name's Travis Kanabi, 35 years old, 2 daughters, and a loving wife, all born and raised in Simi Valley. Almost 2 years ago, we moved out here to New Braunfels, Texas, but I'm still working in California. I'm a fire captain paramedic for a small department in Southern California, so I fly back and forth to commute. We bought this home a couple years ago, and we couldn't be more happy with the community we've built here. The second we moved here, within 2 days, we had made 20 friends, all young families, all young kids, all the same age, all the same interests, and they're all from California. We're in a community in Texas that has more Californians than Texans. In California, one of the first homes me and my wife bought was about 1,500 square feet, and it was a complete fixer-upper. We spent all of our money just purchasing it. When we moved out here, not only was the house cheaper, I spent half as much money on this home, which is 3,200 square feet. So it's double the size home for half the price. When we came out to Texas, we looked all over. Where we are now in New Braunfels, this is hill country. It's beautiful rolling hills with oak trees everywhere. It's not what I thought of when I thought of Texas. I thought flat, brown, farms everywhere. This almost reminds me of like a Paso Robles look. Yes, there's crazy freezing winters and hot summers, but people enjoy those in different ways. It's just sad because California is so beautiful. You know, it's hard to beat the weather and the beaches, but overall, the life goal is what you're searching for. It's for your kids' future and your future to thrive, and it's just not attainable in California.
Yeah, so I hope that's a little bit of a punch to the gut in some ways. I want the Kanabes to be my neighbors, right? They will be just a source of resilience and strength and growth for whatever community they're a part of. And I feel like we owe it. Dan and I believe firmly, when we produce jobs, we owe it. The community owes it to the worker to provide a place for the opportunity to live in the community where they work. And the reality is that in some respects, we're failing some of these individuals. I do want to really quickly call out one person. So this was an incredible project. I got to go to Texas. My advisory board and Tim Gallagher helped us identify folks that had left California. There's a very talented video producer here in the room. His name is Jake David, who actually does all of everything you're seeing, the editing, the custom drone flyovers. This is really his community we're giving you a snapshot of. So Jake, do you want to stand up? And I just want to give Jake a big round of applause. If you need video production of this quality, Jake David is really fantastic, and we can connect you with him. All right, so one of the stories here, and I'm going to compose myself, I apologize. One of the stories here that you heard is housing affordability as a primary driver of economic opportunity and social mobility for individuals and households in any economy, right? And so I want to, this is another really, really arresting statistic that drives this home. We showed you this a year ago, the National Association of Realtors Affordability Distribution Score. You will recall that we were the third most unaffordable metro 1 year ago. Ventura County, because we're such a supply-constrained housing market, has declined 2 spots, and we are now the least affordable metro in the entire United States. This is comparing incomes to housing prices, and that's to say that incomes are not rising the way that home prices are. To use an inflation analogy, we have too many jobs chasing too few homes. To give you a sense of what this looks like, these are some interesting distribution curves. This is for the Ventura County. If you make $150,000 in Ventura County, you can afford 4.9% of listings. Now what's amazing is, in a moment I'm going to compare that to a really affordable economy, but next I want to compare that just to the number 4 least affordable economy. All right, this is Riverside, San Bernardino. We can afford $150,000 income, you can afford 4.9% of listings. You can afford 7 times that much if you're in the 4th least affordable. There is a gap between the 4th least affordable and the bottom 3, and we live in that gap, unfortunately. I want to show you what it compares to a affordable metro. In St. Louis, Missouri, $150,000, you can afford 83.5% of all homes listed by the National Association of Realtors. 83.5. You have just an incredible abundance of choice at $150,000 in income. This actually carries through to rental data. Using traditional metrics, 30% of income for housing. We have some excellent data from the Dyer-Sheehan Group. It's a rental market survey for Ventura County. To afford the average rental property in Ventura County, you need to make $150,000. Right? To afford a 2-bedroom, the average 2-bedroom apartment, you need to make about $170,000 in Ventura County. So there's real work to be done here. The story is supply. You see here that we've just chronically underproduced housing for years. And in terms of the number, I can't give city by city estimates. Dan and I would be very happy if someone wants to sponsor that research. We can do city by city analysis. City managers talk to us afterward. I can talk countywide. And what we're looking at here is that we were producing between 5,000 and 6,000 houses in the 80s. You see here 4,000 to 5,000 in the early 2000s. Right, that's sort of the sweet spot. We need to be producing about 4,000 to 5,000 units of new residential construction a year. A year ago, we announced Thousand Oaks had permitted 1,000 units in 1 year. So there has been progress in this. Simi Valley, in 3 years, had done 1,000 units. There's progress, but there's a big hole. The other thing is this gap. If we had maintained that average building rate across time, we would have about 30,000 additional residential units than we have currently. So we need about 30,000 more housing units plus 4,000 a year. And so there's real work here, and the work starts with us, going into city council chambers, aggressively lobbying, supporting aggressive infill development, obsessively supporting new housing construction, because this is amazing. $891,000 median home price in Ventura County. Astronomical. All right, now what's interesting is, just to show you evidence, local policy does matter. When we look at population data is a late-stage manifestation of economic weakness. And amazingly, there are actually 2 cities seeing significant population growth, Santa Paula and Fillmore. What is it that sets Santa Paula and Fillmore apart? Well, they've been opening new doors to residential, single-family construction. And so again, there's work to be done. And this is not to, again, we're here in East County, this is not to diminish the significant accomplishments that we've seen in other cities as well. But when you permit something, the time transpires. There's a lag until you actually see a door. And here, Santa Paula and Fillmore had done some work and are opening doors. There was a wake-up call. Amgen, you may recall in 2017 when they announced that they were building a 135,000 square foot facility in Tampa. They were moving HR and IT out of Thousand Oaks. They said cost of living was the reason. They couldn't attract and retain talent. They couldn't attract and retain skilled talent in Ventura County. That wake-up call has been there for a while, and so there's work to do. Now, I want to show you one other story of someone that's sort of the face of this challenge. This is someone who's in a different life stage. You met Travis. This is now Mark. Mark has a 19-year-old child that you're going to hear about. Both of these families are thinking a lot about opportunity for their kids, the next generation. Intergenerational social mobility is what's driving some of these decisions. And Mark, amazingly, worked for Bank of America for 20 years in technology finance. So this is a highly trained, skilled employee. And I just want to highlight that this is a story that actually affects multiple socioeconomic strata. But there's some real sort of universalities to these stories.
So we were renting this house from a lovely couple for a lot of years at a very reasonable rent. And we're very thankful and grateful to them to this day because they allowed us to raise our family the way that we really, really wanted to. Unfortunately, a situation occurred that their daughter was going to be coming in and we would have to move out of the house. And when I looked at the corresponding prices in terms of rent, and this is, I think, circa 2021 or so, the prices just were, it was literally 2 to 3 times the rent that we were paying before, and that just became way too much for me to be able to justify, and that's when we actively started to take a look at, okay, we need to go someplace else. We literally got to a place where we said, okay, what are we doing? Because if we're not actually making progress towards buying a home or being able to make a life in Culver, what in fact are we doing? In August 22, we moved to Cedar Park, Texas from Moore Park. Key thing for us moving over here, immediately we felt the impact of, and most people will tell you, okay, hey, you leave California, you don't have to pay state taxes anymore. Texas doesn't have those. And you actually did feel that immediately. We felt the price of gas immediately. We felt the prices of heating and electricity immediately. And it was just this combination of a lot of stuff saying, wow, it's a lot easier to live. My daughter's opportunity as she came here, I thought it was actually really, really interesting because I don't see how she could have done what she's did in California as what she's done here. When we first got here, one of the things, and when we were coming over, my daughter was saying, one of these places that I want to work, I want to work at Dutch Bros. I just want to work there. It just seems like a fun place. So we stopped at one in New Mexico. I was like, oh, it's kind of nice. Okay, whatever. And so we show up over here, and within a week, we hear that they're breaking ground on a new Dutch Bros in Cedar Park. We're like, okay, you're talking about these things lining up, right? So my daughter obviously applies, and one thing about my daughter she's very competitive. She has a huge work ethic, which I'm super proud of. So what she does is she jumps in there and gets a job. So she's a barista or broista, however they call it. So she works there. My daughter, thank God, is the one who's really good with money of my kids. So I'm very proud of that. So she saves up her money, and she saves it up, buys a car, all on her own. We were just there for support. We didn't even co-sign on the loan, nothing. It's all her stuff. The assistant manager that was there ended up taking a manager's job in Utah. My daughter is like, okay, one of the things that I want to do is, she said, you know what? I think I'm going to go and interview for this because I think it would be good practice for me. I don't think I'm going to get it, but I think it would be good. And I was like, I think that's an excellent idea. She ends up getting the assistant manager role. And it's a place where she can actually, pay for her car, pay for rent, save money still, and be able to pay her expenses. As far as what she's been able to do and move out and live on her own, if she was in California, I'm not sure she would be able to do that. It just seems to be easier to be able to live, and getting by is easier. So if getting by is easier, it's a heck of a lot easier to start thriving.
So once again, it takes $161,000 in income to rent the average 2-bedroom apartment in Ventura County. And so that's to say, the housing challenges that we're confronting are not just challenges to job and GDP growth. These are challenges to social mobility for residents of our community. And so the forecast, we actually see a continuation. We forecast a continuation of dramatic home price appreciation. We do see a slowdown, like in California, in the out-migration, that there was this sort of bubble of out-migration caused by COVID-19. But then we, unlike California, we do actually see returning to that original increasing trend over time. And we continue to see jobs being created, positive job growth, but primarily concentrated in low-paying sectors. And we see GDP growth that is essentially stagnant, very, very close to zero, with some years a little bit above, some years a little bit below, and well below LA County, the United States, and the state of California. And so there's work to be done here. So now in terms of what we do next, I just want to take one step back as I start to wrap up, which is that what we've really tried to do over the last 2 years ago, celebrating the extraordinary success that we enjoyed during COVID-19 relative to everyone. It's hard to say success and COVID in the same sentences, but you understand, we had courageous policymaking that really, we did what was best on behalf of the residents of our county, and it took really courageous policymaking. I don't envy any of those people who had to make the decision whether or not to open schools, whether or not to, we look back in the rearview mirror now and say, of course it made sense. At the time, it was really uncertain, and so we should be proud of that work that was done. We talked about that a lot 2 years ago. Last year, we spent a lot of time featuring success stories in the county, and I want to draw you back to these. You can actually you can see these interviews. Amy Krause about the dynamic biotech startup ecosystem that's growing in East County. Brian Gabler and Drew Powers about real successes. I'm actually going to quote them here because this is the basis for a roadmap. We need to do more. So the point is, we have turned the corner. We're doing a lot of things right. We just need much more of it, and we need members of the community to step up and advocate on behalf of these things. So Drew, in this interview, framed it really nicely, where he said, when you're talking about economic development in the modern era, I like to look at it as a triangle. You have jobs, the environment, and housing. And in the middle of that triangle is quality of life. And when in balance, you have investments in all three of those. And so I like this framing because it's very easy to think of quality. So if you're on the upper end of that median home price scale, you have enjoyed the benefits of home ownership in Ventura County and the 50% increase in median home price in recent years. It's really easy to sort of feel like quality of life is assured, that you're enjoying the best of it. But the reality is quality of life should only be measured in terms of how many people have access. Can our entire community access that quality of life? And his framing is beneficial because it shows that jobs and housing are essential components, right? In fact, prerequisites and so there's sort of an attitude of growth, an attitude of growth and opportunity expressed in Drew's. Brian, right, had some really great things to say. You want to talk about attitude, cultivating attitude of growth. This is from Brian's video that we showed you last year. We also have a lot of businesses that appreciate the fact that you can walk into City Hall and sit down with the city manager or the assistant city manager and have a conversation. We're always available to them, right? We can even have the mayor. We had a meeting with our mayor, another council member, our staff, to welcome them to the community, along with the park and rec district and the school district. We wanted to let them know, you could choose to be anywhere, but you chose to be here, and we're glad that you're here. It's an attitude of openness and getting rid of red tape, knocking down, so reduce red tape, clear and consistent guidelines for real estate development, timely review of proposals and applications, an aggressive policy of greenlighting infill development. These are the elements of the roadmap that are already laid out. We need to do much, much more of this, and it means we need to step up and support those efforts that are happening countywide. So we need to acknowledge that housing and jobs are essential components of quality of life. We need to build a pro-growth attitude, and this is a pro-growth attitude that carries through from city managers' offices to city council chambers, from the ballot box to this conversation you're having on the sidewalk with a neighbor. An attitude that says, we want businesses here. Yes, they could choose to be anywhere. We want them here, right? And then we need to provide the housing, right? We need to aggressively court incumbent businesses. One of the real challenges as an economist is we're often being asked, okay, so hey, what's the growth sector that we should forecast in, that we should invest in and try and grow? Obviously, biotechnology is an easy one. But the reality is, the first thing we need to do is really aggressively court the large employers that are here. What do we need to do to keep you here? Right? And they're telling us we need to house their workforce. And then we need to just have this robust, dynamic environment that welcomes new opportunities. One of the real amazing growth stories of the last few years is the trade desk in Ventura County. Unfortunately, no economic forecaster could have said, trade desk, that's what's next. Go back to the late 1990s. No economic forecaster could have said biotechnology. What we need is a dynamic environment that welcomes opportunity, welcomes businesses, and then really tries to sort of house the workforce for the jobs that they will create. And so that's to say there's work to be done. I really want to sort of just leave you with this final sentiment that I hope you understand that we really, really care about our community. We love this place. What we want is we want all that is so great about this to be accessible to more and more residents in our community. We want to provide housing. We want to provide the opportunity for people who have a job in Ventura County to live in Ventura County. And we also want to share with them the promise of intergenerational social mobility. And so that means there's work to be done. And so I look forward to seeing you in the council chambers and on the sidewalk in the neighborhood, right, so that we can continue this conversation. And I thank you very, very much.